The rain had been falling for hours, each drop coming down with relentless force, transforming the park into a blur of silver and gray. The world outside felt suspended, caught in the perpetual beating of water against the earth. Streams of water traced thin, winding rivers along the cracked pavement, collecting in little pools that formed beneath an old, weathered bench. A bench that had seen its share of people sitting on it, but none like this. Mia sat there, barely moving, as if fatigued unmoving. Weight of the storm itself had pressed her into the earth. Her knees were drawn tightly to her chest, her small arms curled around a soaked backpack that clung to her like a lifeline, as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. The rain had soaked through her clothes, her hair clinging in wet strands to her face, blending with the tears that she had long stopped trying to wipe away. The storm outside mirrored the one inside her, relentless, consuming, with no end in sight. She had left the foster house that morning, desperate to escape the emptiness. It had never truly felt like a home. The walls had echoed with orders and commands, but never with the comfort of understanding. Now, there was only silence. The sound of the rain, steady and unyielding, and her own shallow breathing filled the air. There were no voices calling her name, no footsteps hurrying after her, just a deep, aching silence that stretched endlessly around her, isolating her from everything and everyone. At first, people had passed her by, their umbrellas casting fleeting shadows across her small, shivering form, but none of them stopped. Their eyes slid away, avoiding the sight of a crying child alone in the storm, as if looking at her for too long would be too much to bear. One by one, even those fleeting footsteps faded into the distance until the park was hers and the reins alone. A silent, empty expanse. Then a faint sound cut through the steady downpour, a sound not human, not hurried. The soft tap of claws against wet stone. Mia lifted her head, eyes blinking through the rain as she tried to focus on the new, unexpected sound. There, just a few feet away, stood a large German shepherd, his soaked coat clinging to his body, water dripping from his ears. His amber eyes gleamed in the dim light, steady and unafraid. He didn't approach immediately. Instead, he lowered himself beside the bench, his body settling into place like it had always been there. Like this was exactly where he needed to be. For the first time that day, the weight in Mia's chest shifted just a little. The rain still fell in a constant barrage, but for a moment she no longer felt entirely unseen. She looked at the dog, her voice barely rising above the sound of the storm as she whispered, "Did you come for me?" The dog blinked once, slow and deliberate, meeting her gaze. He said nothing. He didn't need to. His calm presence, unwavering and sure, spoke louder than any words could. The rain seemed to soften then, settling into a gentle rhythm. It tapped against the leaves of the trees, the droplets collecting on the edges of the bench, falling quietly to the ground. Mia remained curled up, her arms locked tightly around her soaked backpack, her chin resting on her knees. The world felt far away, as though the storm had carried everything else into a distant, unreachable place. Her eyes blurred, staring at the slick, glistening pavement as shapes dissolved into a soft haze. In the midst of that fog, a memory flickered, vivid but fleeting. She saw warm hands wrapping a soft blanket around her shoulders. The smell of cinnamon and baked apples wafted through the air from a small kitchen, the sound of gentle laughter filling the space. A voice, soft and sweet, asking, "Another piece of pie, sweetheart?" It was her mother's voice. Mia blinked hard, trying to hold on to that memory. But it slipped away just as quickly as it had come, replaced by the cold, wet sensation of rainwater clinging to her sleeves. The warmth was gone. The kitchen was gone. So was the one person who had ever made her feel safe, who had held her like she mattered. A single drop slid off the tip of her nose and hit the pavement with a faint splash. Mia watched as it spread, blending into the countless other drops, disappearing into the endless sea of water falling around her. Just like her, small, unseen, swallowed by something bigger, something far beyond her control. Her fingers tightened around the straps of her backpack, digging into the fabric until her knuckles turned white. She squeezed it tightly against her chest, as if pressing it hard enough could make time bend, could bring back those warm hands, that comforting smell of cinnamon and love. She closed her eyes, willing the memory to return, but when she opened them, the park was empty again. The steady rain filled the silence where her mother's voice used to be, and all she had was the sound of her own uneven breathing, fragile and alone, lost in the vast grayness of the world. Beside her, the dog remained, his presence constant, silent, steady. His body was a quiet heartbeat in the hollow space inside her. Mia didn't speak. She couldn't, but the tears rolling down her cheeks spoke volumes. I miss you. I don't want to be alone. Through the soft hum of rain, the low rumble of an engine interrupted the quiet. Headlights cut through the mist, reflecting off puddles scattered along the park's winding path. A police cruiser rolled slowly to a stop near the bench. The door opened and Sergeant Emily Ward stepped out, pulling her hood tighter against the drizzle, her boots splashing lightly. As she moved across the wet ground, she had been patrolling, making sure no one was caught out in the storm, but when her eyes landed on the little girl sitting alone, something in her chest tightened. Mia sat there, soaked to the bone, her arms wrapped tightly around a backpack as if it was the only thing holding her together. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The sight of the girl, so small and fragile, made everything else fade. She wasn't just small because of her age. She seemed to have shrunk, folded in on herself as though the world had grown too big, too cold, and she was doing her best to disappear inside her own skin. Emily's fingers curled instinctively at her sides, her heart twisting with something she couldn't quite name. God, she's just a kid, Emily whispered, the words too heavy to stay inside. Her throat tightened, and a deep ache formed inside her, a mixture of instinct and something much older, something she thought had been buried long ago. A memory she couldn't face but couldn't shake. Empty rooms. A voice that would never call her name again. No child should ever look that small in the rain. Not like that. Not with that hollow look in their eyes, the kind that told you they weren't waiting to be found anymore. For a moment, Emily forgot her uniform, the badge on her chest, the rules that came with her job. All she saw was the little girl, who looked like the world had let go of her hand and never thought to turn back. Then Emily realized she wasn't alone. Beside the girl, the German shepherd sat, his posture steady, almost protective. His soaked coat clung to his body, but his stance was firm, unwavering, as though he had always known this was where he needed to be. His amber eyes locked on Emily, calm but watchful. His attention never wavered, his posture rigid with quiet. Purpose. Emily slowed her steps, feeling the weight of the dog's gaze. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice gentle against the rain. "Are you okay?" Before Mia could even begin to answer, the dog moved. It wasn't frantic or sudden, it was deliberate, smooth, and purposeful. His paws splashed gently on the wet ground as he stepped forward, placing himself squarely between Mia and the officer. The change was subtle but undeniable, like a shift in the air itself. His body lowered slightly, muscles tensing beneath the soaked fur, creating an unspoken barrier. He didn't growl. He didn't show his teeth. There was no aggression, just a quiet resolve. "You will not touch her unless I know she's safe," the dog's stance seemed to say. Mia's small fingers tightened around the edge of her backpack as she looked up at him. For a moment, her tear-streaked face softened. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. The dog wasn't just standing in front of her. He was choosing her, protecting her. Emily froze, her gaze flickering between the girl and the dog. There was something profound in the way the dog stood, his body bracing against the storm, his silent resolve filling the space between them. It wasn't just instinct. It was devotion. Emily stopped mid-step. The need to reach out faded under the weight of what she saw. Slowly, carefully, she bent her knees, lowering herself to the dog's level. She didn't move too fast, didn't make any sudden gestures. The last thing she wanted to do was disrupt this fragile, quiet bond that had formed between them. The rain had been falling relentlessly for hours, a heavy downpour that blurred the world outside into a wash of silver and gray. Each droplet hit the ground with purpose, the sound of water striking the pavement like the rhythm of a persistent drumbeat. The park, once lively and familiar, now felt like an entirely different place, swallowed by the storm. Water traced thin, rivers along the cracked pavement, curling around the old wooden bench where Maya sat, her tiny frame barely visible under the weight of the rain. Her body was curled tightly, as if the rain itself had pressured her into shrinking, making herself smaller in an attempt to escape the cold and the overwhelming emptiness she felt inside. She clutched her soaked backpack to her chest as if it were the only thing keeping her anchored to the world. Her fingers were pale, gripping the straps with a strength that seemed to suggest if she loosened her hold, the whole world would slip away. Wet strands of dark hair clung to her face, mingling with the tears that had long stopped being wiped away. They fell freely, one after the other, blending seamlessly with the rain, as though it no longer mattered. The world beyond the park felt too far away. The foster house she had left that morning had never been a true home. It had been a place filled with noise and commands, but there had never been any room for understanding or love. It was a place where she had never truly been seen, where the walls seemed to close in on her. So she had run, hoping that somewhere out there, in the vast empty streets, there would be some space where she wouldn't feel so lost. Now there was only silence, broken only by the steady sound of rain, and her own breath shallow and uneven filling the space around her. No voices called out her name. No footsteps hurried after her. Just the endless expanse of emptiness stretching in every direction, a vast, suffocating silence that threatened to swallow her whole. At first, people had passed by, their umbrellas casting fleeting shadows over her small, trembling figure. But no one stopped. Their eyes slid away quickly, avoiding the sight of a crying child sitting alone in the storm, as if it were something too painful to acknowledge. No one cared. One by one, the few souls who had wandered through the park disappeared into the Adi Humbai distance, leaving Maya with nothing but the rain. It was like the park had become her world, a world swallowed by the storm, with no place for her to belong. Then, suddenly, a sound broke through the storm. It wasn't human, nor was it hurried. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, the quiet, steady sound of claws against wet stone. Maya blinked through the mist of rain, her tired eyes trying to focus on the noise. She lifted her head slowly, her gaze tracing the source of the sound, and there, standing just a few feet away, was a large German shepherd. His coat was soaked, water dripping from his fur in steady streams, but his posture remained firm. His amber eyes were steady, unflinching, as he stared at her, seemingly unafraid of the storm. He didn't rush toward her. Instead, he sat down beside the bench, lowering himself calmly, as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. He was not there by accident. He had arrived with purpose. And suddenly, for the first time that day, Maya didn't feel entirely invisible. The rain continued to fall, but now it was different. The storm no longer felt like something she had to endure alone. She looked at the dog, her voice barely rising above the sound of the downpour. "Did you come for me?" The dog blinked once, his amber gaze soft but unyielding, and slowly, without a sound, he moved closer. He didn't need to speak. His mere presence was more than enough. The storm raged around them, but somehow, in that moment, Maya didn't feel as if she were entirely lost. The weight in her chest seemed to ease just a little, as though the dog's silent presence was enough to remind her she wasn't alone. As the rain softened, the taps against the leaves and the puddles, the steady rhythm of the downpour became almost soothing. Maya remained curled up on the bench, her arms wrapped tightly around her soaked backpack. She rested her chin on her knees, staring at the wet pavement as the water pooled around her. The world outside the park felt distant, too far away, and she felt like the storm had swept everything else out of her reach. Her eyes began to blur as she stared at the slick pavement, her vision fading into a soft haze. And in that blur, a memory flickered to life. She could see it so clearly, as if it were just yesterday. The warmth of her mother's hands as they wrapped a soft, cozy blanket around her shoulders. The smell of cinnamon and apples filling the air, the sound of a soft, gentle laugh echoing through a small kitchen. Her mother's voice, light and comforting, calling her, "Another piece of pie, sweetheart?" Maya's breath caught in her chest, the image so vivid, so real. But it slipped away just as quickly as it came, replaced by the cold, unfeeling weight of rainwater soaking into her sleeves. The kitchen was gone. The blanket was gone. Her mother was gone. And with them, the only person who had ever made her feel safe. A drop of rain slid off the tip of her nose, landing softly on the wet pavement with a faint splash. Maya stared at it as it spread into the other drops around it, swallowed up by the endless sea of water falling around her. Just like her, small, unseen, alone. Her fingers tightened around the straps of her backpack, the pressure so hard it caused pain to shoot up through her knuckles. But she didn't loosen her grip. The backpack was the only thing left that felt real, the only thing that kept her grounded. She squeezed it tightly to her chest, as if the pressure could somehow turn back time, bring her back to a place where things had been simpler. Back to that kitchen, back to her mother's arms. But when she opened her eyes again, the park was still empty. The world outside was still a blur of gray and silver, the rain still coming down in sheets. She felt the weight of the silence press against her, louder than any sound. Beside her, the dog remained, unwavering, silent, but present. His calm presence was a quiet shield, the steady heartbeat in the hollow of her chest. Maya didn't speak. She couldn't, but the tears that rolled down her cheeks spoke louder than anything she could have said. "I miss you. I don't want to be alone." The low hum of an engine broke through the rain, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the soft glow of headlights cut through the mist. A police cruiser rolled slowly into the park, the sound of its tires slapping through puddles. Emily Ward, a police officer, stepped out of the car, pulling her hood tighter against the drizzle. Her boots splashed against the wet ground as she walked toward the bench. She had been patrolling the area, making sure no one was caught in the storm. But when she saw Maya, alone and drenched, something inside her tightened. Maya was small. Drenched from head to toe, her body hunched against the weight of the storm. She looked smaller than her age, like she was trying to fold into herself to disappear. Emily's breath caught in her throat, a sharp pang of something old, something buried deep inside her. This child wasn't just small because of her age. She was small because the world had been too cold for her, too big, and she had tried to disappear. Emily's hands curled instinctively, her heart aching with a feeling she couldn't name. God, she's just a kid. She felt it deep, a gut-wrenching ache that tugged at her. She couldn't leave her like this. Emily's gaze shifted to the dog beside the girl. He sat unwavering, his amber eyes locked on Emily's every movement. There was no fear, only a quiet certainty that said, "You won't touch her unless I know she's safe." Maya's fingers tightened around her backpack as she looked up at the dog. In that moment, she wasn't just seeing a dog. She was seeing something that wasn't going to leave. He was here. For her, Emily moved closer, her voice soft, carrying gently over the rain. "Hey there, sweetheart," she called, stepping closer. "Are you okay?" Before Maya could even respond, the dog moved. It wasn't fast, it wasn't sudden, it was deliberate, calm and protective. He shifted his body, stepping forward, placing himself firmly between Maya and Emily. His body lowered slightly, muscles tense but not aggressive. There was no growl, no threat in his posture. Just a silent promise. "You won't touch her unless I know she's safe." Maya's eyes softened, her small hands gripping her backpack, but she didn't look away from the dog. Emily stood still, her chest tight as she took in the bond between them. The dog wasn't just guarding her. He was choosing her. Emily paused for a moment, lowering herself down to the dog's level, careful not to break the fragile bond. The world around her disappeared, the storm fading to a distant hum. And she realized, in that quiet moment, that Maya wasn't alone anymore. Neither of them was.